So yes, it reminded me that I should turn it on, which I just did. So the webinar will be recorded. So in case you are a participant and don't want to be seen on the video will be shared on the EALTA website later on. Just turn off your camera during the webinar. We have 3 presentations today. The first, we have Mariah Michel. I will present her shortly afterwards. Maybe I mispronounced your name, which might be quite possible. Each presentation will be 30 minutes in total. That means 20 minutes presentation and 10 minutes Q&A related to the presentation. We will have a longer time Q&A session after the third presentation. So it would be great when you could spare your questions maybe after the presentation, and then please use your raise hand function or just type into the chat. I will try to monitor the chat too. We will have a break after the first 2 presentations. And what else? What else? Yeah, well, at the very end, we have an announcement to make, 2 announcements actually. So please don't run away, leave the webinar, because we would kindly ask you to join for a quick evaluation. Yeah. All right. So then we can move on to the first presenter. Mariah is a professor of second language acquisition at Groningen University, the Netherlands. She's not involved in the field of sign language assessment, but she's one of the top experts in task-based language teaching. So this is right down her alley, the topic of this webinar. So we thought, hey, it would be good. Great, yes. So we thought it would be good to have an introductory kind of like mention and like going into the topic by Mariah. Mariah studied Dutch and German in Utrecht and holds a PhD in applied linguistics from University of Amsterdam. And her topic of the presentation is assessing integrated skills and L2 communication. All right, and then I will just hand over to you, Mariah. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Tobias, for introducing me. So it's Mariah Michel, indeed, but that's not a problem. I'll share my screen. So let me first get to the slideshow, and then this one. Yeah, can you see it now, what I'm sharing?
Yes.
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 Okay. So thank you for inviting me, and I'm really happy to be able to talk to you today. My background is generally on second language acquisition, and my research in the past years has focused a lot on task-based language teaching, but also a lot on writing processes. So when talking about assessing integrated skills in second language communication, I will mostly focus on my work on that I've done my own research on writing and integrated tasks in writing. So let me see. Yeah, maybe as a starter, and I think quite a few of you will be aware that in large-scale testing and assessments, such as the IELTS or ETS TOEFL, but also Delft-DALF, TESTA for German, in recent years, there has been a move to much more authentic testing. And authentic meaning that the idea of what is being assessed should be something that test takers in the end also encounter in real life. The initial ideas here are based on the CFR, so the Common European Framework for Reference of Language, that puts a heavy weight on communicative language use and communicative success. And based on that, it was also clear that if you want to assess people they should also be taught or if you want them to learn how to work in real life situations, you should probably also test them in much more real life situations. From a testing perspective, it's not just authenticity that is important, but also something that is called cognitive validity. And I am aware that some people in the audience are probably much more familiar with the testing and assessment perspective, or much more experts on that than I am, but some might not. So I thought I briefly introduced the idea of cognitive validity. Validity in general is that we think of that a test is valid if it indeed tests what we intend to test. So that if you assess speaking, that it is indeed a speaking test. But the cognitive validity specifically looks at or aims at the cognitive processes that are underlying the skill or the performance that you are testing. So if you are testing writing, which has been my field of expertise, you want that a test that assesses writing actually also elicits the kind of processes, cognitive processes, that are involved in writing. So in researching tasks as a whole, I use the spider web here on the right-hand side, also in my teaching quite often. And it comes from Luke Harding, Lancaster University, an expert on assessment. And what he says that are the qualities of good assessment are that a test is valid, that it's reliable, authentic, practical, and it creates impact. As a language teacher, this impact aspect is dear to my heart, because I think if we assess in a good way, it will have a positive washback on the teaching, because teachers will try to prepare their students to the test. And if you come up with an authentic test, it actually means that also the teaching focuses much more on authentic language use. So that authenticity is at the heart of the task-based approach to language teaching, where we use authentic real-life tasks as our aim to go to. And because you want to reach that, also the assessment should be there. And if you look at research into those kind of assessment tasks, as said, we can look at construct validity, we can look at the cognitive processes that are involved. But in assessment, we might also want to know whether the measures that we use lend themselves for automatic scoring. That is something that has happened lately here. And that is one of the reasons why I set out to also research these kind of tests, and probably also one of the reasons why both the British Council that creates IELTS and ETS TOEFL, the people behind the TOEFL test, have funded part of my work. Task design matters from a TBLT perspective. I think that's logical, but I will show you a little bit how tasks actually influence the kind of things that you can expect to happen on a test. So, as said, I've been heavily involved in researching writing processes. This has always been joint work with Andrea Reves from the Institute of Education in London. And one of our achievements is that we published a guest edited a special issue in Studies in Second Language Acquisition, where we looked at methodological advances in investigating second language writing processes. So a lot of research to date has focused on the product. Typically, if students write something, you look at, is the written text a good performance? But what we actually looked at is always like, okay, are those processes that are involved, are those the ones that are underlying good writing? Now, we base our research on a model by Kellogg, and you see it here. And there are other models also of writing. Beerreiter Scardamalia or Flower and Haze are well known, but all of them more or less agree that when you engage in writing, there's a first stage of formulation and planning where you think about, okay, what do I want to write and how do I organize the content that I want to write in a text. The next step, and that's still part of translation, of formulation, is the translation process, where you create out of your content and the plans that you have a written text, and you do that in language. So in spoken languages, or written languages, this would typically involve lexical retrieval. So you find the words, morphosyntactic encoding, so you put it into a sentence structure, and then you look for cohesion, so make sure that it's actually a coherent text. Once you've done that, and it's on paper, there comes the execution phase. So typically nowadays you use your fingers to type a text, and those include motor movements. And when it then is on paper, you do monitoring. And in the monitoring phase, what you do, you reread what you've written, and if needed, you engage in editing and revision processes. Now, what is important in general for writing is that this is not something that you do in these stages, but it's a highly interactive and iterative process. And that's also something we see actually, that good writers typically, they plan, they organize, they translate it into language, they put it down on paper, they edit, monitor, and then they start again. So it's a highly dynamic process. In my research, I've always looked at second language writing because specifically those translation processes of lexical retrieval, syntactic encoding, and cohesion is something that in a second language requires much more thinking. That's a lot more control than you typically need in your first language. That also holds for the editing and the revision processes that need more cognitive control and language control, whereas what you want to write and how to organize it, that's something that you do to the same extent also in your first language. So in the first piece of research that I'm going to present you, it's a project together, as I said, with Andrea Reves and Minjin Lee. It was funded by EALTS, the British Council, and we were interested in what is the nature of the cognitive processes that L2 writers engage in when they complete the IELTS academic writing test. What is the nature of the online writing behavior? So not just the cognitive processes, but also the behaviors, so pauses and revision, and to what extent text quality is related to cognitive writing processes. And you see a fourth question also, we looked also into working memory. Now, the innovation I think that Andrea and I brought into this kind of research is that we looked at different methodologies. And I let you read the slide briefly. So just to give a little bit of more context, so in order to tap into those cognitive processes and into the behaviors, we use introspective methods such as think aloud or stimulated recall. So while people are writing or after they've written the text, they think aloud about, okay, so what were you thinking when you were writing? We also use something like keystroke logging, and I'll show that in a second. And we use eye tracking. So we measure what people are looking at while they are writing. The keystroke logging looks like this. So this is a lot of text or a lot of characters here, but basically it's a software that takes into account or keeps track of the letters you've been typing, the characters. It also keeps track of where you pause and how long you pause. So you can see here at what position in a sentence someone makes a pause, and whether it was 7,000 milliseconds or 3,000 milliseconds long. And it also takes into account revision processes. So here the back key was used. So basically if people delete text or they use function keys, that also takes it into account. And based on that information, we can research the processes people are involved in. We also used eye tracking. And I hope I can show you indeed the... Will it work? No. I can't get the videos to work, I think. That's a pity. Let me see. Can you still see my screen? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, but it's not. Somehow the video went. I'm sorry. So I can't show the video then, but at least, so what you see here is a screen. So I tell you what you could have seen. You see here a screen where someone is writing in the middle. So this text that starts with, "To a very large extent, I agree." And at the top, you see the instructions. And at the bottom, you see the two little red dots. And those are the points where the person is looking at. And basically, the little video that I wanted to show you here would show that this person is making a break, a pause in the writing process at because. And during that, they read the information in the sentence. So the eye gaze would go back to, "Such a cultural gap will create large learning opportunity because." So they stay with their eye gaze within the sentence. In this example, when the person stopped, the red dots would move through the whole paragraph. So they would reread all of the text they had written so far. And in this example, you would see here that actually the eye gaze, they would stop and they would go back to the instructions, so the top part of the screen. And what we did in this research is we coded for all that gaze behavior to see, okay, so what do people read when they make a pause? And what did we find? We did find that indeed people typically, when they stop at larger textual units, so at an end of a paragraph, they read a lot of the paragraph, but when they stop within a word, they're much more inclined to just read words. And that relates back then to the fact that we interpret it in a way that we said, okay, actually, people stay, when they make longer pauses, they usually think about much larger components of the text than the others. Now, in a follow-up project, this one was the one by ETS TOEFL, we looked at, again, it was the same methodologies as pauses, revisions, eye gazes, and stimulated recall. And this time we looked at task effects and also at stages of writing and proficiency. Now, in TOEFL, there are two tests. So there's the independent task and an integrated task. Those integrated tasks, at the beginning I already said, they are more authentic. They prepare prospective students for real academic tasks, because that's typically what you also do. And we think here about things like a listen, write, speak task, or a reading, write, speak task, or a listen, reading, and then write, speak task. And this typically requires learners or test takers to incorporate substantive content from source materials into their text or into their own performance. The research question we had here was, to what extent either an independent task, so just one based on a prompt, influences the behaviors and the cognitive processes. And we looked at the writing process as a whole, but also throughout stages. Again, we used the different types of methodology. So we had keystroke logging, eye tracking, and stimulated recall. Participants were typical postgraduate students at an English university. So in terms of age, mostly female, mostly MA students in their early 20s. What did they do? So they first participated in the listening and reading parts of TOEFL. They also did a small typing test. And then they performed the writing task of TOEFL, once the independent and once the integrated part. And you see it's a long test battery, including different task types. We measured their eye gazes and we engaged them in a stimulatory call afterwards. And we also recorded their keystrokes. The independent task is just like this. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? And I'm not allowed to use the statements here because these are the official TOEFL tests, but you are aware of the kind of statements that are typically used. And in an integrated TOEFL task, what people do is they read a passage, and you see it at the top screen here. So there's a reading passage. They listen to a lecture that is on the same topic. And then the task is to summarize the points made in the lecture, explaining how they cast doubt on points made in the reading. So they basically have to integrate the information. Now, to briefly show results, just small bits, what we did find is that the independent task here in the screen to your right, that's the lighter gray. And the dark gray is the integrated task, so the one that has the listening, reading, writing. Now, the lighter gray, you see that has fairly stable processes overall. And that's at the top. Those are the keystroke logging data, so how quick people were writing. And at the bottom, you see the number of backward saccades. That's an eye gaze measurement. And you see that over time, people in the independent task, so just in the prompt writing, they did fewer, basically looking back in their text. So it means they were probably more satisfied. They did less editing over time. Whereas in the integrated task, specifically in the top paragraph, you see that there's large differences there. So there's active writing time goes up and down and up and down. But in the backward or in the eye gaze measures, we had a fairly similar process as for the independent task. And what is most important is that towards the end, so at stage 5, the two patterns are fairly similar. So at stage 5, the integrated independent task have very similar writing behaviors. And that was important to see that, okay, so even if you use a integrated task, you're still measuring typical writing processes that you would expect also with an independent task. So the implications for assessment here are that writing processes do differ during task performance when it's integrated or independent, but both elicit very similar writing processes. Whereas at the beginning, the writing was more geared, or in the integrated task, people need some time to look at the text, but towards the end, they really engage in the same processes. We also see that some measures lend themselves to be included in automatic processing or assessment, and that's typically the case for example, the speed measure, so speed fluency or pause frequency, but others not. So you still need human raters. That's the take-home message. I did want to tell also a little bit about another assessment that was into looking at young learners, but I think my time is a bit up. So should I go ahead or not? Yeah? Okay. So because this is another study that I performed with Judith Kormasch, Tineke Bravo, Michael Ratajczak from Lancaster University, and this was geared to young learners. So it's the TOEFL Junior test. We were specifically interested in working memory, and that's important because that's a specific group of learners, and I think some of the insights we gained from this research might also be interesting for the group of people that you are typically assessing, because it's a different outset than what other large-scale assessments typically do. So we wanted to look at young learners at the specific assessment context. Again, we looked at writing tasks, but also at working memory. Working memory usually is seen as something with 4 components. You have like the central executive, so the people that take the decision. So that's the CEOs in a company. You have an episodic buffer, so the part where you memorize the story that's basically being told. There's the visuospatial sketchpad, that's more for visual information. And with hearing people, you have the phonological loop, so where you memorize phonological information. And when you look again into Kellogg's model, there are different ideas of where these different aspects of the working memory have an impact. So that was the question we wanted to ask here. Because writing is a heavy cognitive load, and it might be that working memory plays an important role when writing. So the hypothesis we had about working memory in second language writing was that individual variation in working memory functions, those might introduce differences in how good kids can perform a test. And that's because a larger phonological short-term memory might allow you to make more and longer complex lexicosyntactic units. Your visual memory might assist in planning and monitoring. And if you have a good central executive, you can handle different tasks simultaneously. So these were the research questions. What is the role of working memory? And how does that differ with grade level and task type? And is there a differential role in the different writing performance? So basically, how does it influence all of this? We had almost 100 young students in Hungary participating in the test. They were at an A2 to B2 level. They loved doing this. It was a digital test. And what they actually had to do is they had an editing or 2 editing tasks, so correcting errors in a short text. They had to read an email and write a response. So that's already an integrated task. And they had an opinion task. So where, and also a listening to write task. So they listened to a teacher discussing an academic topic. In this case, it was how the rain moves across a volcano, something like that. And then look at the animated picture and summarize the listening input into a paragraph. Now, overall, the students were best at the opinion writing task. So that's where they scored highest, and they were less good at the editing tasks. But you see that the integrated task types, so the email and the listen write, they were actually scoring really high also. And when we then look at working memory, the kids had a normal to good working memory skills. You can ask more questions if this has your interest. And then if you look at how this actually correlates or interferes with each other, we did only find that for the listen write task, there were significant effects of working memory. So in all the other tasks, working memory was not an important value. And oops, what happens here? Sorry. So what we could see that young learners with an added year of writing, they usually were better on integrated tasks. So it was the older learners, so in year 7, that outperformed the year 6 students, but the working memory did not have a massive influence on all of this. And this holds the same also for the other ones. So we found only in those editing tasks that actually working memory had an effect here. The important outcome of this study is that we did show evidence for the cognitive validity of the writing components. So we did see that this test is actually a good test assessing second language writing in these young learners, and that the careful design of the task that takes into account young learners' cognitive processes was well done. It was developmentally appropriate for the group of learners we had. The limited effect of working memory actually is a good news, because what you don't want, especially in comprehensive schools, is that working memory advantages some kids more than others. So the fact that the test actually did not create bias or unwanted bias for kids with high working memory is good set of information. And again, it makes the test appropriate. Somehow there was, yeah. So the implications of all this is that task design is really important when you're creating those kind of assessment studies. You need specific for young learners, clear and straightforward instructions. You need to make it developmentally appropriate. And the kids actually liked those scenarios and context. And in terms of inclusive language test design, it is good to provide enough planning time also for the kids to create or to work on these. We did see, or we hope that this kind of testing actually creates a positive washback, so that more integrated tasks and more opportunities to express opinions in writing actually has a positive effect on the type of instruction that is given. So just as a final thing, I just bring up this one again. When you create integrated task, the research that we have shown is that it makes tasks, or it makes assessment tasks more authentic, but it does not affect the cognitive validity or the cognitive processes, because you're still assessing writing. And in that sense, the conclusion is that authentic tasks can be used in assessment. And that's all from me right now. One more thing, I hope this one works actually, because last week I was in Amsterdam, and then I was at a new museum. And because one of the people at the counter is a signer, they created this instruction on how to order a croissant with your coffee. And I thought it was nice to share with you. I hope this is the international sign language. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Maria. Very interesting. Could you maybe unshare? Stop your presentation. Great.
Yes.
All right. Thanks a lot. It was a very fascinating talk. So now the floor is open for questions, comments. Maria?
If you're talking to me, I was just fixing the video. Anyway, it was a very interesting speech with a lot of suggestions. Well, actually, what I found a little hard, because of course, integrated skills assessment is, as far as I know, something quite new also in spoken language assessment. So in the case of sign language assessment, there might be practices concerning integrated skills assessments, but they are rarely structured methodologies or things that are more that can also look into the cognitive aspects. So personally, I found it extremely interesting to see how something which is normally considered as an everyday task or something normal in a second language class can actually have so many implications also on the cognitive perspectives and stuff. So at least for me, it was a good opportunity to reflect on what we can still do, what else there is to do for that concerning the assessment of sign language. I was wondering, we can probably share this reflection. How would you study, let's say, hearing people learning a sign language and then having to assess the way they sign with the available tools? You mentioned eye tracker, okay? But I was just wondering if you have experience or ideas of how we could assess more gestural features, more physical movement features, because you did mention the body movement, which was something interesting for me. But it's just interesting if you have any ideas of how we can address this specific feature, which is something that is very important for sign language. Thank you.
Yeah. I must say that I really I lack knowledge of your field of expertise, so I might have yes, a very naive perspective here. I mean, from a task-based perspective, task-based assessment always starts with that authentic task. So in that sense, the first thing would always be that if your task is that you should be able to order a croissant at a till, I would do this, and if I come back with a croissant, I have achieved, so I've completed the task. So that would be the very basic assessment. I think in terms of using those advanced tools in order to see whether learners are engaging in the cognitive processes that underlie typical language use, one could probably see whether what a native signer looks at when watching signed language, whether learners look at the same things. So comparing native signers to second language signers. And I'm not sure that is something that's done, but that could be an indication of that they actually engage in similar cognitive processes. I'm not sure, Tobias, your hand's up there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there have been quite a few studies, eye tracking and sign language, but rather looking at eye gaze behavior in a linguistic sense. For assessment, so far as I know, there hasn't been any studies, but I submitted something with a colleague of mine, Aaron Batty, and we will hopefully hear next week, get a positive response, and then we will look actually at eye gaze behavior in receptive skills test. Basically looking at where do speakers or signers of English or Swiss German Sign Language as a second language in interactive kind of role play tasks.
And
So
Aaron,
that goes.
if I remember correctly, Aaron did his PhD on
Exactly. It's
on
basically the
visual,
same. It's the
so
same
on
kind of
film,
methodology. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah,
we want to extend it to
sign
sign
language.
language. So hopefully that will work out. I hope to learn more about that. But I think for sign language assessment, eye tracking hardly I personally don't know any study, so that doesn't mean anything, but I think it hasn't really applied, or there isn't that much research in general terms around on research in sign language assessment. I mean, that's for.
I mean, what could be another thing is, for example, also that so if you have those kind of integrated assessments, I don't know what it is, but I guess it will also exist that you read something or you watch something and you have to answer it, either in signed language or in rating. So again, you could see whether the processes that they are using, whether the way how they are reading a text, which would then be a second language text, I think. So whether those are similar second language text or second language behaviors that we also see in speakers of the second language. So that could also be something interesting to look at.
Yeah.
And for example, I mean, if you go back to the whole idea with the working memory, I guess, again, I don't know, but I guess that the visual spatial sketchpad for signers is usually much more established than it is you would think, than their phonological loop. With hearing people, the phonological loop is much more important. But I guess that for signers, it might be the other way around. So that could also be something interesting to look at, indeed, whether that differential training of those two parts of the working memory has an effect on, for example, writing processes, because writing is visual, but it's also for hearing people, it's also a spoken, a phonological process, and that could be an interesting question to see how a more established, a more practiced visual spatial sketchpad helps in aspects of writing that are more visual.
Yep.
So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It is interesting indeed.
All right. Then we think, just looking at the time, maybe one more question, if there is any. Sorry. No raised hands, no question in the chat, no. All right. Then Maria, thanks a lot. It was really very inspiring. Then we move on to the next presentation. We have to swap presenters. So now we have presenter number 3, meaning Maria. Instead of Stephen, he is delayed. So we move on to Maria. So let me introduce Maria. First of all, she is the co-convener of this webinar series, the EALTA SIG4SIGN. She holds a PhD, and I guess I totally will mispronounce your name and everything that should sound Italian. Maria.
Just Maria is enough. Maria
Just
Dimonti
Maria.
is enough.
Okay, she holds a PhD in linguistics from University of Roma Tre, and she was also involved in one of the first projects on the CFR for Italian Sign Language on a European level, on a European project, and she's currently an adjunct professor of Italian Sign Language and General Linguistics at the Università degli Studi Internazionali di Roma.
Very nice.
Well, all right. Then her presentation is using pre-recorded videos in B-level lists, meaning Italian Sign Language classes, application, and preliminary observations. So the floor is yours. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Tobias. Thank you very much. I also mispronounced the name of Tobias. So actually, we are fair on this. I will not take it on me. So let me share the presentation. All right. There we go. I hope you can all see it correctly. Okay. Okay. I hope you can all see it correctly in full screen. So yeah, so my presentation is not a scientifically structured presentation. So I apologize for this, but it's, as I said before, if this is something which is extremely new for spoken language assessment, it is even more for sign language assessment. But what I want to bring today is the experience that I gained in the 10 years working as an Italian Sign Language teacher at the University of International Studies in Rome. There's also an English equivalent. When teaching Italian Sign Language to students, hearing students from beginners to advanced levels. Mind that I am a native hearing signer. So of course, in my classes, I mix Italian and Italian Sign Language, but the specific case is applicable to the more advanced level. So when the class turns into being completely signed. So for this reason, I believe there is something interesting that I can share with you today. And of course, any comment, feedback, questions on specific stages of the assessment are more than welcome. So what I will be talking about today. Now, I'm sorry, I need to adjust my screen management. Okay, there you go. So There we go. I will be talking about what it is to assess integrated skills in the specific case of sign language education, the context of the study I am bringing to you today, the use of pre-recorded videos for integrated skills assessment, selecting videos according to the CFR that are useful for this kind of assessment, and preliminary observation and conclusions about my own experience and what we can sort of take home as general rules that are applicable also to other sign languages. Okay. So, by definition, integrated assessment evaluates language proficiency through tasks that require the test taker to produce a written or spoken output based on listening or reading comprehension. So basically, the student or the test taker listens or reads something and then has to produce some kind of a written or spoken output based on what he just read or heard. So in the case of spoken language, you can see in the table below, this sort of come up like this. The person listen to a live or pre-recorded text and then has to either speak or write upon it. And the same goes with reading. So either read a text and then speak or write something about the text. Now, as the previous presenter very well explained, this is a process that for spoken language implies a number of skills. And for the teacher, it is a very good occasion, a very good moment to expose the student to real life text, real life contents, and then receive feedback, receive an answer to these contents that are actually applicable to everyday content, everyday language, to daily language, to real life language. In the case of sign language, this is also the case. I'm sorry, I'm having problem with the transition from one slide to the other. So, okay, there we go. So, in the case of sign language, integrated assessment evaluates language proficiency through tasks such as reproducing or summarizing what the teacher just said. So the teacher assigns something and the students has to reproduce or summarize what has been said. Summarizing the totality or part of a signed video in sign language. Reporting on any signed content, again, in sign language, or and summarizing the totality or part of a signed video in speaking or writing. So in the case of sign language, and the equivalent of what we have seen before can be treated as follows: watching a live or pre-recorded text and producing a signed or written text as an output, or also a spoken text. Now, in the specific case of the courses that I hold at university, since my focus is on developing sign language skills in Italian Sign Language, I tend to avoid using Italian Sign Language as a source language as much as I can by introducing students to signing as soon as possible. So as many of you probably also share, in my input materials would mostly be based on nonverbal contents like images, silent videos, etc., etc., and then progress to more to sign contents that are either designed expressly for sign language education or are available online as a signed content shared among the signing community. So for this reason, I exclude the part where the output by the student is in writing or speaking, and I focus mostly on signing. For the sake of today's presentation, I will focus mostly on inputs such as video inputs, so pre-recorded signed contents. The context, as I explained, is the one of the International University of International Studies in Rome, where I hold these 3 courses for absolute beginners, students of Italian Sign Language. I normally meet them when they have no skills at all and leave them when they have a sort of partial B2 competence in Italian Sign Language. In this slide, you have an overview of the settings. So I'll give you a few minutes to a few seconds to look at it. Now, the approach that I normally have in the classroom is that of dialogic and inquiry-based teaching methodology, which is I introduce students, I welcome students to ask questions about their learning process, or on the contents of the course, so that I constantly have a feedback on the way they are progressing in their learning, and I have the time and the opportunity to adjust their learning process as I advance in the course. Also, the dialogic approach stimulates students, especially the beginners, to overcome possible problems coming from anxiety or low self-awareness, which is actually important to adjust as soon as possible so that they won't carry these problems with with the management of their own body up until to the more advanced levels of competence. Okay. The levels where I actually use integrated assessment is the final test of the intermediate level course, and each lesson of the advanced level course. In the intermediate final test, informal sign contents, I provide students with videos that are selected according to their level of competence. So these are videos that I will later show you were either designed expressly for educational purposes or that are selected among the ones available online. In the intermediate final, these videos are mostly made are mostly, sorry about that, are mostly informal sign contents where the signer report news or stories with a low rate in the use of classifiers and contents that are familiar to the student. So we are completing the part where the CFR tends to refer to familiar contents, to topics that are close to the experience of the student. So these contents are normally referring to similar topics. So topics that are shared, such as food, eating, going out, etc., etc., or academic life, which is something which is very close to the student's experience. In the case of the advanced level, in the integrated skills assessment, takes the shape, turns into something that is more similar to formative assessment, which is I use the videos both to teach and evaluate the progress and the skills of my students. So again, I select the videos according to their level of competence. I use the slow down, speed up feature of the players to adjust the speed to the competence, the viewing competence of the learners, and I then continue all along the course by increasing the level of difficulty and the speed level of these videos. So sign videos are part of the teaching materials. I have at least one sign video for each lesson, and I analyze them with the students in order to draw their attention to specific features that are interesting for me to work with them in that specific moment. Now, I will be kind of general and very vague because I did not want to close the possibilities for this discussion. But if you do have specific question on how I address specific features of the language, please do ask question. Let's talk about it in the discussion phase. So let's say starting from the basic levels where I use videos to draw their attention to lexicon, to face, hand coordination, etc. I use these videos to either assess lexicon understanding of spatial and deictic references, so the increase in their grammatical skill towards sign language, the ability to reorganize the text to create summaries, which is something that is implicit in the B2 level of competence, the possibility, the ability to treat contents that are not created by the student but are created by others, and then to manipulate these texts in a way that is understandable and shareable with other signers, and also to assess the metalinguistic abilities. So taking the students to reflect on the features of the signs that they are seeing, so that they can understand if a specific sign is used as an adjective, as a noun, what is the function of a specific sign in a given moment. So as you can see, the use of these videos have a lot of different applications. Now, one of the most important things that I like to stress is the fact that the videos should be in line with the learning stage of the students. That is, it's okay for the video to have something new, but not too much, or else we lose the students' attention and the students' motivation because we are presenting them something that they are not able to manage themselves. The signs used in the video should be clearly visible and distinguishable. So videos by signers that sign either too fast or in a let's say dirty in the sense of not clear hand shapes, are not the best to suggest, especially within a learning class. And also there is a possibility where we have classes of students that are particularly motivated in increasing their lexicon and learning new structures. There's a chance for us to suggest them to go out and look for contents, look for videos that are signed that actually represent some kind of challenge for them, so that these videos can actually be discussed within the class with the teacher and for specific features. So the more we fine tune the students' attention to these features of the signs in the videos, the more the students will get used to observing specific manual and non-manual features of sign language, as well as sort of self-assess their level of competence, because when they I've seen this a lot when I share the video viewing with the students. When the students get to the point where they can actually watch a video from the beginning without ever slowing down the pace of the video in order to keep up with the signs, they do feel very satisfied, and they do get a rush of satisfaction coming from the fact that they are also gaining this passive ability of self-assess themselves and realize how far they got in their signing abilities. Now, as Tobias reminded, I did work on the one of the first projects for the adaptation of the Italian Sign Language training to the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages from 2011 to 2014. I had the chance to immediately apply the outcomes of the project to my classes. at the university. So I did actually use many of the materials that have been designed within this project in this classroom. So here you have a small visual where the videos are organized according to the progress that we expect from the students. So as you can see, the first videos, the A-level videos, have a very neutral background. Also, the signer is one, maximum two signers, and everything is kept very basic and very simple. In the higher levels, so in the B level, the background changes. So the background is more complex. There are more natural elements. And in the B2 level, so B2, as we approach the C level, the background also becomes more and more confusing, meaning by this that we move from a static background to a more dynamic background. So street, parks, places where things are moving in the background and can eventually distract from the signing and the handshake. As signed video became progressively more available online, so here you see the sign left videos combined also with other videos by native deaf signers who can either share stories or the use of specific signs for poetry, opinion, news, etc. So, especially for the higher levels, the use of these natural text, natural sign videos actually increase the amount of input that we can provide our students with and the amount of signing styles that they can be exposed to. Now, this is an example of how the videos are presented as they go ahead. I will not dwell too much into this. And now what we can actually do with these videos, especially the ones that are produced not expressly for educational purposes, but those that are made for sharing within the signing community, is the fact that these videos help us to compensate for one of the most important problems we have when we train hearing people to sign language, which is the lack of signing environment where they can go to learn or practice the language. With these videos, we can compensate this lack of environments by providing them with self-made and self-designed contents that are made for natural communication within the deaf community and can somehow compensate for this lack of exposure that would come without these videos. Also, the fact that we can actually work in sign language on signing videos makes it so in classes like mine, where I am a hearing signer, it helps avoiding students to code switch continuously to Italian. So they do tend to focus a lot on sign language and cut out any hearing stimuli that could come as they are attending the class. And they can also, and it's also very good to work on visual and space management, which is very hard to focus on if you are in a one-to-one situation where the teacher has to show and explain at the same time. I've noticed students often get confused with what is the example and what is the explanation in my signing, while focusing on the video as something that is there that we can rerun, re-show, and then, work on them metalinguistically, actually help the students to focus on what is the example and what is the explanation. So, of course, all these features that we focus on while explaining, while working, etc., can also be tested in the assessment. So we can use these same features to test if our students did actually understand, did actually acquire the linguistic skills that we are trying to convey in that specific moment. Right, so as didactic material, the use of pre-recorded sign video allow a teacher to focus the attention of the students. The same video can be used for multiple purposes. So we can use the same video to analyze hand shape, facial expression, lexicon, sentence structure, discourse analysis. So the same video can be used for multiple purposes. We have multiple signing styles available. And in the case of Italian, but I'm pretty sure must be the case for many other signing community as well, we can also provide the students with examples of different variation of sign lexicon. So the students will not only be exposed to the variant used by their own teacher, but they will also be able have the opportunity to compare the variant used by their teacher with variants used by other people in natural signing setting. So it is easier for the teacher to provide examples of different varieties of signing. It can be slowed down, we said that already, and also we can use these videos to train on how to summarize contents by rerunning the same video over and over again to show how some specific contents that are important to summarize have been skipped or not. So this is not something that can be done if I provide a signing text and then I ask my students to summarize it, because for the logic of memory, of time memory, yes, students will most likely forget some important features. The teacher could also forget the specific sign that has been used to address a specific topic. And so this creates as to the confusion when trying to convey specific contents. So the fact that there is a video where these things are fixated and it's easy to return to the specific sign, to the specific structure, actually helps the teacher on focusing the attention of the student on specific things. All right, and again, we can use it to test. For that concerning the results, so what the students actually reported as their own experience using these videos. So for that concerning my experience as a teacher, observing the before and after signing skills, I can actually observe that there is an increase in the awareness, in the signing awareness, and also in the sense of being able to sign. So they do become increasingly aware of the features under observation, as well as how much they still lack to learn, how much they still need to learn to become fluent signers. This I said before. Also, the fact that they can use online resources is a motivation for them to keep improving their skills also after the end of the course. So it does convey the message that they don't need to stop learning sign language as the course stops, but they can continue improving and continue exposing themselves to sign language also in other ways. And finally, integrated assessment is not only a precious resource for assessment itself, but it's also an important tool for linguistic education in terms of formative assessment as well. So this is it for today. Thank you very much for watching this far, and I'll give the floor back to Tobias.
Right, thanks a lot, Maria. So the round is now open for questions, comments, further relating to the last presentation. Yes, someone was writing in the chat. Yes, please, go ahead.
Hello, oh, is my audio on? Yes.
Yes.
Hello, good morning. Oh, no, I think it's good afternoon for you, right? I'm here in Brazil, so the time is a little bit different. Well, Maria, I really liked your presentation. Oh, by the name, my name is Enya. I'm a master's degree student here in Brazil. And I have read your article called Life After School, Deaf Education and Lifelong Learning in Italy. And
Yes.
in this article, you mentioned deaf foreigners learning Italian Sign Language. And I am currently researching deaf people and foreign language learning. And your presentation made me think more about deaf foreigners learning Italian Sign Language. So my question is, do you think this would be possible with a similar approach to the one you presented here? And of course, I understand that your presentation focused on hearing learners. So some adaptations would have to be made, of course. But according to your experience, do you think it's possible to teach Italian Sign Language to deaf foreigners?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Actually, in my experience, foreign deaf learner, well, foreign deaf people who are signers, so who have their own L1 signing, are actually very fast in learning a second sign language. Actually, the problem in their case comes in the moment in which this knowledge needs to be structured. So in terms of, what is the same sign, what is the same structure, what can be different, and so on and so further. So absolutely, yes, this approach can be used with foreign sign language learner, absolutely. It is true that in the case of deaf learners, but this is also the case of non-signing deaf learners with learning Italian Sign Language, okay? They do already have a visual approach to the world, okay, in a way. So all this insisting on the spatial feature, deictic feature, all these things may not be necessary in the case of deaf learners, while other things such as lexicon, language structure, also borrowings from spoken Italian into sign language because maybe that person in that moment do not have the sign. These things can be absolutely useful for a second language learner who is deaf when learning sign language. Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Great, thank you.
All right. There's a question in the chat from Lisa. I'll try the last name, I guess Finnish maybe, Halkusari. What do you use as a platform for analyzing videos?
Okay, so this is nota dolens. In terms, what I mean with this is this far, the analysis that I do is a human-based analysis. So I look at the videos, I parse them, I get an idea, and then I use them for teaching. So actually, when I show the video in class, I use the platform that is the native platform of that specific video. So if I am using my own videos, the ones from the Sign Left project, I'll just project them through Zoom as I currently do, or in the case in which, or better, I uploaded many of them to YouTube in a private page, and then I use the YouTube platform and the YouTube features to control the speed and non-speed of the platform. Unfortunately, my university is not rich enough to provide me with an analyzing platform, but this is my secret dream. So maybe one day it's in my drawer.
All right.
Thank you,
Is there
Lisa.
any more questions you would like to ask Maria? No. All right. Maria, then thanks a lot. Oh yeah, there's one in the chat. How did you select the videos, and what criteria did you use to determine whether they were at an intermediate level exactly?
Okay. Now, basically, the guideline, the general guideline, is the one provided by the Common European Framework of Reference for Language. So at the time of the project, we did reorganize all the descriptors so that they could actually fit a progress in the development of the skills of a hearing learner, beginner hearing learner. Now you have the compendium volume, which also have these general descriptors, which actually provide general goals that needs to be achieved by sign language learners as they progress. So given videos provide already complex texts, I would not use them as they are, at least not the natural videos. I would not use them as they are in the beginners levels, because they are too fast, they are dirty, again, in terms of clarity in the hand shape use, etc., and they may address topics in a way which students are not competent to manage, not yet. But as students become competent with signing skill, creating basic and complex sentences, they become aware of the space, etc., that's a good moment to begin introducing videos as materials for them to study on. In all cases, I mean, if this is of interest, I can look for some references to papers that I wrote at the time where I do address this specific topic.
All right. And Maria, again, thanks a lot.
Thank
Very
you.
interesting.
Okay.
So then let's have a break now. Actually, the third presenter just let us know he is not able to make it, unfortunately, but still, let's have a 10 minutes break until 3:30 Central European time, and then get back, and then we finish up earlier, right? So we have a general discussion after this break, and then we see each other in 10 minutes. Yep.
Since somebody was asking me about how the criteria that I use to select the videos, I thought it was a good idea to show how I work with the videos with my students by comparing the approach that I have with with beginners and the approach that I have with advanced level students, just to give you an idea of the difference that there is in working with them. Again, as a hearing teacher of sign language, okay? So, of course, there are adaptations according to what the fact that a person is hearing or not. So, hearing or deaf. So, I will share with you my screen. Okay. So this is for the advanced, so it's not yet. Okay. This is one of the videos. This is a collection of videos that I normally prepare for my students of the basic course of level, the basic course of Italian Sign Language. As you see, there are a number of videos that I selected in the years to expose them to either cultural contents that are the ones that you see here in the top part, and then numbers, finger spelling, good morning, goodbye, grammatical contents by deaf professors from other universities, etc., etc. Now, this first one is one of the possible videos that I could use to teach my students. I will just show you a few seconds so you just get familiar with the features of the video, and then I will return to it to show you how I would work on this video with my students. So I'll just let it play. Okay, this is about enough. So I will re-show you. Okay, so this is the beginning of a self-introduction video where the signer is introducing herself by saying, my family is composed of my parents and they're both hearing. So this is the sentence that is being signed in this case. When I show students this kind of video, they have at least, they do know how to recognize at least the sign for parents and the sign for hearing, deaf, me, you, etc. So when they watch this small part, my question would be, I would stop the video at this moment and ask them, by speaking, okay? So what is this? What did she just said? Okay, and they would probably reply to me in speaking, saying, "Oh, she's talking about her parents," or "I did not understand," or "Can you please show it again because I did not see the signs." So, showing them this video or this part over and over again, they do start to recognize the sign for mother, the sign for father, they take reference to mother and father, and so on and so forth. Um, this video is naturally slow because it's one of these didactic videos that we created for sign language education. So it's not, it does not need to be slowed down. It does show the reference to the space in front of the signer. So the fact that they point in front of themselves and say that they are both hearing, and etc., etc. When they get to higher levels of competence, I'll show you the other kind of video. You want this one? Okay. All right. So this is one of the videos I'm working on in this moment. So these are students that are beginners in the advanced level. So they are not very skilled yet, but they are more skilled than the previous level. Sorry again. I will just avoid talking over it. Now this part is longer, is about 2 minutes long. So actually, in the last lesson where I work on this kind of content, the first step was to slow it down because at least for the analysis, it was too fast. So what I did, it was to go here and slow it down to 0.75. This was a good speed for them. In the moment when they actually started to parse the signs better, I would re-show the video to them so that they could actually see the signs and parse them specifically, and then ask them, okay, what is this part about? But this time, the question is not in Italian, but is in Italian Sign Language. So they need to understand me, first of all, and then they need to be able to summarize what they have seen. Actually, what happened, since they are just starting with these activities at the advanced level, is that many of them confuse, for example, the sign that the signer used, which is this one, increasing the number of homes that are green homes, with this, in terms of increasing the class, the energetic class of the sign, the energetic class of the house. So basically, they confuse these two signs by saying, okay, in order to have more greenhouses, we need to increase the number of homes that have multiple layers, so multiple floors. So that was the confusion in that specific moment. So watching and rewatching the video, and also the way they replied to me and the way they gave me their impression of what was significant and important for them, actually gave me the input to adjust what they were learning so that they could actually focus their attention on what was actually important in that part of the video, which was simply the fact that the European Parliament provided some new regulations about how greenhouses must be designed. So basically, I hope you've been able to see the difference between the kind of contents that I'm referring to. These are very different, but the difference is motivated by the fact that early signers would never be able to manage visually, and also from the content standpoint, they would never be able to manage the YouTube videos, the last video that I show you, because the speed of the sign is way too fast. The signer use signs that are classifier based, or they refer to situations that the students are not familiar with, while the first one is slow down. It refers to familiar topics, and for this reason is closer to what a beginner student can actually handle. So I hope this sort of replied to the question about the selection of the videos.
Thanks a lot, Maria, to get some insight in your practical side of your work. So do you have any comments, thoughts, questions? Now we have two experts here. It's a good chance to exchange ideas or to ask questions. No? No raised hands, no comments in the chat. Oh, there's one. All right. Karen, just.
Right. So I'd like to say thank you very much to Maria. That was very helpful because my students do ask me for more and more videos. I have done similar videos, but a few, and I said, that's enough, you should figure it out by now. But you've convinced me that I should accommodate them in producing more, because I think this generation of learners really do rely more on the visual learning cues than we did, because we didn't need all this to learn and acquire the level of near native fluency that we have. So I said, if we did it without it, you can't. You just shift your brain. But you have convinced me now that I do need to have my deaf assistants produce more videos for them, and then have them continue to produce their own. They do produce their own, and they do it separately. They're very shy to show it to me. But I only use one of the examples in assessment. But once a week they meet separately from me on their own and record themselves, and then they assess each other. So thanks for letting me know that we're out in the Caribbean, we're on the right track.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for sharing your experience. And well, I will actually also not only you and your deaf assistant to produce more videos, but I would also suggest anyone who is deaf, or deaf community, deaf signers out there, just provide more content so that sign language learners can actually have all these beautiful and resourceful contents to increase their learning, because as teachers we have a limited time to provide contents. And those of us who also do research do have even less time to produce contents. But the larger deaf community can actually benefit from producing news in sign language, or conveying cultural contents, literature in sign language, because all these materials actually return to them in terms of having more prepared interpreters, interpreters who can actually find more resources to train themselves, provide a better service, better interpreting service, and especially when thinking about a deaf child in school, having a signed equivalent of the national literature, the national cultural inheritance is something which I think is very, very valuable. Not only to train future interpreters, but also to train deaf children themselves. So absolutely, if you do have the chance to create more signed contents and share them online, please do. This is gold, at least for me.
Yes, will do. Thank you. We do. I have four deaf on my team, and we do have recordings of stories, and we have a lot of the things that you've mentioned on deaf community websites. So it's
Okay.
really just more of what we do within the classroom, within the university classroom, because the deaf schools have a bank of stories, etc., that they update regularly also.
So set them free, set these stories free so that people can use them to learn and also to teach.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Karen, for your input. Are there any more comments, questions, suggestions? All right, I will make an announcement. Maybe you can think about possible questions. So, you know, once a year you have this webinar, and in the evaluation form you can indicate which themes or topics you think that are dear to you, that are important. And depending on the results, we will, Maria and myself, we will decide on the topic. And normally we try to have a mix of deaf and hearing presenters. This year it didn't work out. We tried to reach out to people, not successfully this time. So in case you are interested, please let us know. We will, once we know about the topic, we will post it in the Facebook group. I posted the link to the Facebook group a little bit earlier in the chat. So feel free to contact us. Definitely the theme needs to match, right? So what you are working on, where you feel comfortable, and what the theme will be. But I think it's very important that we have a balanced mix of deaf and hearing presenters. And new faces are very welcome. So sometimes we have same faces, which is perfectly fine, but I think it's also good to, last year, for example, we had 2 colleagues from University of Cologne, which was great just to have 2 new faces. And so just as an encouragement, yeah, reach out to us.
Yeah. And if I can take off my presenter jacket and put on the one of co-convener, about this, we will have a sort of call for participation for that related to the topic that will come out from this survey that we are that you are invited to fill out at the end of the webinar. Again, as Tobias said, the idea is to have a mixed webinar where deaf and hearing participants can actually provide contents. In the case you feel shy, okay, because I can imagine some deaf colleagues can feel shy in presenting their work, or they may not feel their competence or their skills are good enough for this. Do not, okay? We are in a context where we are all learning from each other, and it is very important we all do learn from what you do in the classroom and how you do things. So if you do things that you have something that works, and it's somehow related to assessment and sign language, do show up, do get in touch with us, and we will be happy to listen to what you have to suggest and eventually consider your participation as a speaker in this webinar. So we would really like for this webinar to keep growing as a mixed content, mixed environment, and an opportunity for deaf and hearing people to learn from each other. So that's why it is very important for us to have people who has a long experience in spoken language assessments, such as Maria. That's how we pronounce it, Maria Michel. We have two Maria today.
Marije.
Mariah, okay, Mariah. So thank you very much for being here. And also, unfortunately, Stephen, it was not here, but in his case, the presentation would be more related to interpreting training. So we're open to your suggestions, to your proposals. Don't feel shy, okay? This is the only thing I wanted to add to what Tobias was saying.
All right. So maybe just advertise a little bit on the kinds of activities we are having. So we have this Facebook group, so there where we will post as well as on LinkedIn and Facebook on conferences, publications, other events related to language assessment in general or sign language assessment. So, and then I have one announcement on not personal behalf, but on a research behalf. I'm currently doing a survey on the use of technology in sign language assessment. And I'm hoped still to find a few people who are willing to fill out the questionnaire. It's quite long, so take your time in case you are working, feel comfortable in this field. The survey is available in English and international sign. So I will post the survey link. Just hang on. Sorry, something is not working here. All right. All right. Then I think we can close the webinar. We closed earlier today. That's okay, I guess. Then I would like to take the opportunity to thank both presenters. Thanks a lot, Mariah, to dive into this new context for you. But I think it was really interesting and great to learn more about your work. Thanks a lot, Maria, to share your work and your experience. Thanks for everyone attending the webinar. I think it would be great if you could take a few more minutes to fill out the evaluation form, because we need to write a report to EALTA so that we get funding for interpreting next year. And yeah, thanks a lot to the two interpreters. Great job as always. Thanks a lot. All right, then I guess we can just close it.